3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining for another History Live interview. Today is going to be quite different. It's the first time ever that I'm interviewing two people at the same time. Now let me tell you why I'm interviewing two people at the same time. I have got the pleasure of speaking to Nigel and Helen Strudwick. They are Egyptologists, archaeologists, and they do some amazing work in the field, in museums, as well as writing books. And actually they are married. So that's why we are doing a joint interview. So thank you so much for joining, Nigel and Helen.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us, as the saying goes.
Yeah, well, I've been wanting to chat to you guys for a while now, so I'm so happy you guys have the time to talk to us tonight.
That's great to be here, and nice to see people joining and joining in the conversation later, I hope.
Yes, definitely. I know we have some interesting questions coming up about some of your finds and your digs throughout the years. Nigel, as you can see, he's sort of in Egypt.
I'd hate to break it to you, he's actually downstairs.
Well, the background, it works so well, so you've got to teach me how to do that. So, Nigel and Helen, tell me, how did two Egyptologists end up getting married?
Who's taking this one? You
are.
Oh, I'm taking this one. Well, the facetious answer is, of course, we went into a church and got married there. But we met as students in Liverpool. I was starting my PhD in 1978, and Helen was in her second year as an undergraduate. And then, well, just one thing left to another, really. You know what these things do.
Yeah.
And we got married in 1982. So it'll be 40 years next year.
Nigel used to help me with my hieroglyphic homework, as it were. So that was great.
Did you guys used to write like little love letters to each other in hieroglyphs?
I don't know that we did that, but it's quite useful for leaving notes. Like, you know, if you go out and you leave the key somewhere, you know, you can leave a note in hieroglyphs saying the key's, you know, in the dustbin or something like that. So
exactly.
Yeah,
it's quite handy. But I don't think we ever wrote love letters to each other in glyphs.
Yeah. No, I don't think we did that, but we've certainly used it as a private code in various
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
It's very good for passwords as well, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not the actual hieroglyphs, but the transliteration. You can write down what your password is in translation, and nobody's going to guess how you transliterated it. So it's quite handy.
That is probably the best piece of advice I have ever heard on one of these interviews.
There you go. My bill is in the post.
So you were both at Liverpool University together?
We were, yeah. I was, as Nigel said, I was undergraduate there.
Yes. And were both of you studying, obviously, Egyptology? What areas were you specializing in?
Well, I mean, I was starting a PhD on the administration of the Old Kingdom, as it turned out, and Helen was in her second year as an undergraduate, so she'd done general archaeology in the. She should be telling you this, not me. God.
I was doing a general archaeology degree that had an Egyptology strand in it, and so I was specialising in Egyptology at that moment. Oh, someone coming in, and.
Just give me 1 second. Julie, you can come in. You can come in. Yes. Hi.
So I was learning, basically. That's what I was doing, learning what to do.
Yeah. Okay. Take a minute call. Sorry. This is why live is so interesting.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, so, you know, it must be quite amazing to have two, you know, Egyptologists and to have two people with such amazing minds working together, that you can both swap ideas and rely on each other's specialities. Am I right?
I think it works well together. I mean, I think we spend. I mean, it's the kind of subject where you're not ever not being an Egyptologist, in a sense. I suppose, except when we're being Morris dancers, that's a different thing. But otherwise, you're always an Egyptologist. So there's no time when we're not, probably, other than when we're worrying about stuff in the house or something like that, or somebody that we know is not very well or something. We're basically talking about Egyptology pretty much all the time. So it's quite fertile in a way, in that, you know, we're kind of always exchanging ideas and thoughts, and I think it's very fruitful. I know what you
mean. It means that if you got writing an article or something, then it can be, the other one can read it as well. And Helen's usually my worst critic.
I think I'm your best critic.
Well, you know what I mean.
I improve everything you say enormously. Yeah. And you do for me too, though.
It's funny, I don't seem to be appearing on the screen.
I can see you.
Ah, all right, okay. There he is again, right, okay. Yep, does that answer that one?
But do you guys like charge each other?
Oh, we shouldn't we?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it is. I mean, it's a really good way of because we are pretty harsh critics on each other, I would say. I think it does mean that things get, you know, what we work on gets a bit better, a bit sharper, perhaps, than it would otherwise. So I don't know what you think, Nigel. Is that true?
Sorry, somebody was saying they hadn't got a password for this, and I've just sent it to them. What was that again? Sorry, I was.
There you go. They've just arrived. I was just saying, I think it makes our work sharper, because we're both quite harsh.
We're lucky that we don't have to go to a colleague and make ourselves look stupid in front of them to read something. But we will do that as well.
We've both got quite different interests, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'll find that out later on, though, probably.
As we go along, you'll probably learn that.
Yeah. But do you guys ever have arguments about history?
Yes, and Helen's always wrong. I mean, I always win with history. History, I think Helen would agree, is not her fort.
Not at all. I can't do it at all. It's just, I don't know why. I cannot remember, names of kings. I find that so boring.
Do you remember going with students, for your exams, I was going through the lists of kings in every dynasty, trying to get you to remember them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know the kings of Egypt better than I know British history. That's not saying a lot, though, because I'm really, really rubbish at history. I just don't find it interesting, except when it starts to get down to the people. Really, honestly, what the kings are doing, it leaves me absolutely cold. So I'm not very good at it at all, because that's what it feels like history is all about. But Nigel's very, very good at it. So that's a really useful kind of synergy in a way.
Definitely. I always find, like, it's so interesting when I hear, like you said, Helen, that the history of the kings doesn't really interest you that much. So it's quite interesting how you get a lot of Egyptologists who are completely obsessed with learning about the kings and what happened with them, and then you get the people who are loving learning about the common everyday person. So I just found that very interesting.
That's a well-known problem. I mean, that's the old style history versus newer style history. I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. When we say about history, it just means I can remember the dates and dynasties and things like that. I've always been good at that. Helen doesn't, but you know, I'm not just absolutely obsessed about, okay, what did Tutmosis III do in that year? You know, I couldn't tell it.
Yeah.
But you're way better at it than I am. I mean, just way better than I am.
Yeah. So where do you guys draw the line between personal life and work life?
Well, as Helen said earlier on, they sort of run together, don't they? I mean, it depends what if we're doing something else, but we do plenty of other things. I mean, Helen does, apart from the one you're going to ask about, I'm sure in a minute. Helen likes going out in the garden, and we do the things like that. She does a lot of things for our church. I do a lot of things for the local. I'm on our local council. But these things just come and go. You're being an Egyptologist. It's more than it's like a vocation, really. And you're going to get, when you're at a dinner or someone's going to find out what you do. It's going to start asking questions, and you can't say I'm off duty now. It's just not right.
And it's not true though, really, either, is it?
Well, no, that's the thing. Being an Egyptologist isn't necessarily. There's a lot of arguments within the professional world about what is it being an Egyptologist, and none of us know. We all have our own definitions of it, but you're an Egyptologist whether you've necessarily got a job or not, with, at least in my opinion, with a certain amount of qualifications and experience, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's something I remember one of my heroes, Yaromir Malik, who taught me in Oxford, saying to me, you're an Egyptologist whether you've got a job or not, which is nice of him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But, like you said, with the Egyptology thing, no one really knows exactly what an Egyptologist is or does. There's so many different areas in that. For myself, I like to see myself as someone who tries to deliver the information to people, to get more people interested, because, we need to get more people to learn about the history. So it's equally valid to have someone who studies it and publishes for the academic world, and then also someone like me who shares it with the public, because we have to get new people in to continue.
We are always trying to point out to some of our colleagues just how bad they are at communicating things. I mean, they may teach as well, but there's a particular thing that you have to have, I think, for teaching to the greater public, and not everybody can do that. We find it particularly with writing and books and things, that trying to make books and things useful.
Yeah.
Because a happy reader is a sort of more benign reader, one hopes.
But with Egyptology, you said, like, when someone finds out you're an Egyptologist, they ask you lots of questions. What do people respond to you when you say you're an Egyptologist, if you're just meeting them down at the pub or something like that?
Well, it can be. I mean, the best example we've had recently, Helen, is that Jewellers in Royston, just down the road.
Oh, yes.
I went in there to get another watch strap and get a chain fixed for Helen. And somehow or other we got onto ancient aliens and things, and I was just telling you what a load of old rubbish it was, But then when you went in,
I got the same.
Months later, what was it you said? He said you'd learned more than me in 15 minutes, and he'd had done in everything he watched.
But it was funny because he said also, he really knew what he was talking about, and I thought, well, yes, he would, because that's, he's an Egyptologist, so he would know what he's talking about. And then he was saying, but of course, there are all these very interesting things on television, and so they must be true because they're on television. So
it's not always the case. Yeah.
No, it's not always the case.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched some documentaries done by reputable companies, reputable Egyptologists, and they'll say something in there. I don't know if it's how they've edited it or something, because I know that it can be changed with editing.
That's true.
But sometimes I watch it and I go, oh my God, what are they saying? No, this is not right.
Yeah, that's often the editor. But some of our colleagues, we all have, I'm sure, have slightly eccentric views on something. I just don't quite know what they are. You'd find out if you just ask me you'd have to ask me something that which I gave a different to normal answer. But
But I mean, I think also you can, as I think Donald Trump would say, well, you can misspeak as well, and then a little judicious editing will make that quite an extraordinary statement. So it's difficult sometimes when you look at something that's been edited and you think, gosh, I don't recall saying that, I must say.
Yeah. I was speaking to Yasmin Al Shazli last week, and I just watched a documentary that she was in, and I sent her the link because she hadn't seen it. And she got back to me and she was like, oh my God, please don't believe anything they're making me say in this documentary. They're making out like it's my theory. It's not. So,
yeah.
But anybody who's dealt with the media for more than half an hour knows that.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I'm trying to change that. So, so tell me, Morris dancing. Nigel, you belong to a dancing group.
We both do. We both do.
Both do. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you both belong to.
There we are. Can you sort of see that?
Oh wow.
There's Helen on the left there. This was on 5:30 in the morning last Saturday, on May Day. We were out. We wouldn't be doing it this year because of the virus, but we got a photo shoot in a newspaper that day. So that's
Helen playing the melodeon.
Helen and two of our fellow dancers. So that's what the kit looks like. Yeah, I'll keep switching backwards and forwards with the sharing thing. So
please.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a traditional dance that almost died out at the beginning of the 20th century, and it got revived, and it's quite different now. But there's all sorts of historical strains in it and tensions between different parts of it. People see it differently.
Yeah,
it's a really nice alternative. You can go out and let your hair down a little bit.
How did you both become involved?
Well, I'd always done watching Morris dances when I was younger, but I never thought I could do it. And then Helen was, after we'd been working in the US and we came back to the UK. Helen was doing some temporary work. There was one of the people she was working for was a Morris dancer in our group, as it turned out. So. And Helen said to me about having a go. And one day, January 1992, I plucked up courage and showed up. And 4 other people new people showed up that night. I'm the only one still there. And it's been great. We've had a lot of fun. Helen's our main musician. I'm currently the leader of our group. Yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of fun, and you can be silly, be somebody else for a while, drink a bit, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Is it different to like I've forgotten the name now, but like the traditional Scottish dancing that they do up?
Oh yeah, nothing like it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very different.
It's an English thing, and it's one of our great annoyances is that the English don't tend to. They often make fun of it, and a lot of younger people particularly make fun of it, and they don't really. You wouldn't get in Germany or in Italy or in Wales or in Scotland people making fun of their traditional dances in that sort of way.
Yeah.
It's that negative streak that is very common in Britain.
Yeah. Well, anyway. You guys need to work on getting some of the younger people to stop, making fun of it. Get them involved.
Yeah,
we definitely. Need to because it's getting older and older, and there's a definite. A lot of people. I mean, most of our group we've got one person under 50, haven't we?
Yeah,
and quite a lot of us are over 60. So
a lot of our regular group.
Yeah.
We do have some younger people who dance with us as well.
Dancers where they live, they join us for certain special occasions and things.
And how did you get into playing the melodeon, Helen?
It was just one of those things. I was not in the side at the time, and we were travelling to Rochester Sweeps Fair. I think it was was that the 2nd of May, Nigel? I can't remember, or was it still the 1st of May? Anyway, we were in a car, and the person who used to play for the side all the time, she said, why don't you have a go? So she handed me this melodeon. So I played it a little bit, and
right.
Well, Helen's very musical, so she understands scales and things, and you need to know them for playing a melodeon.
Actually, I don't think you do need to know scales, but anyway, it was something that I found not that difficult. It's quite easy to play badly. it's to play it well. It's, even though you actually need to spend a bit of time, but to play it badly, it's really simple. And to get a tune out of it of some sort is relatively simple too. So so she lent me this thing overnight, and I think probably Nigel was cursing that by the next morning, because I played it pretty much all the time. And then sort of like the next day they said, do you want to come along to some of the practices, see how you get on? So that was fun. So I've been doing ever since, really.
Yeah. Okay. So it just sort of happened.
It just happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I enjoy it madly. I mean, I really do. It's good fun, and I know really it's just, I love, I always like things that are being done for real, if you see what I mean. So things that are being done really wholeheartedly. So and when the dancing is going really well, then it's fabulous being part of it and being part of the driving force, in a sense, almost for it, because I'm the music that makes it happen. So I just love that. But there are moments where you're out in the middle of a sort of recreation ground somewhere at somebody's fete, and nobody's watching, and it's raining a bit, and then it's miserable, actually, to be honest.
Yes.
So
last Saturday morning.
It was magic.
Absolutely magical.
Really was.
Perfect.
Yeah. First time out, I'm sure. Yeah, in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who wants to go first? How did you become interested in history and Egyptology, and what made you pursue a career in Egyptology?
I think Nigel should go first.
Well, in my case, I just got in. My mum and dad used to take me to the public library in the village, the town I grew up in. Every Saturday, I pulled books out, went through dinosaurs, space travel. One day, I picked out one book that turned out to be one of Barbara Mertz's. So either Temple Tombs and Hieroglyphs or Red Land, Black Land. I think it was Temple Tombs and Hieroglyphs. Read it, and I was hooked. And then I just used to do projects on Egyptology wherever I could. I won an essay prize when I was 15. Rather let it go when I was doing in what we call the sixth form in England, 16 to 18, obviously because I was concentrating on exams. And then when I couldn't quite get into university for anything else, I thought, oh, to hell with it, I'll apply for Egyptology. And I got into Oxford that year, and rest is history, really.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. Right, your turn.
My turn. I suppose I was more interested in classics and things like that, although we did Egypt as part of religious education at school. And but then the Tutankhamun exhibition happened, and I never got to see it because we lived in the north of England, and it was just too far away to go. But a friend of ours brought back from London a copy of the Deroche Noble Corps book on Tutankhamun, and I read that over and over and over again, and just thought, "Oh, that's marvelous! Really interesting stuff." And didn't think any more of it. Yeah. I thought that book was so good. And then, when I was going to university, sorry,
you got a copy of it, haven't you?
I think we got several copies of it, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so when I was applying to go to university, I put down Egyptology on my form, my university form. It used to be called an UCA form in this country. Anyway, so I filled that in. I put Egyptology down, and my teacher said, I'm not going to sign a form that says Egyptology. She said, because you're never going to get a job. It's just a ridiculous thing to put down. So I put down archaeology. And my first choice was Liverpool, because the archaeology course did Egyptology. So she didn't realise that. So she then signed it, and so that's how I sort of ended up going there. And I'm not sure. I sort of drifted into a career in Egyptology, to be honest. I wasn't really expecting to have a career in Egyptology. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. Well, Helen, you have had quite an amazing career, and you have published several books. One that I absolutely love, like I cannot tell you how much I love this book. is the Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt. Honestly, it's a perfect book for anyone who wants to get a great feel of Egyptian history. Was that a big task to take on?
It's interesting actually that you asked that. I really love that book. It's one I really like, and I don't like to blow my own trumpet at all. So I don't often say to people, "Oh, I wrote this and I think it's really good." And in this case, most of it I didn't write. So I'm happy to actually recommend it because I think it's excellent. What happened is that the publishers contacted me and said they'd got an option on what's called a part work written. I think it was originally in Spanish, and they were going to get it translated, and they wanted somebody to edit it and to kind of rejig it so that it was kind of thematically arranged with sort of introductory sections as well. And so I said, yes, I'd be happy to do. No, well, actually, it's not true. First of all, I said, can you send me some samples? And I had a look and I thought, well, this is outstanding. So I said yes. And it was actually moderately quick to do because it was so good. I didn't have to do a lot of changing of it, I didn't feel. And I just feel it really works very well. And so, I really like it as a book. And the problem is it's not available in the UK on the whole. So I think that's quite sad.
Can I tell the story about that one?
Go on then.
This is a great story I love to tell it. When I was teaching in the US in Memphis, Helen was over visiting. We went into a bookshop one day and I went off looking, because I went to collect a book, didn't I? And you went off. I said, have you looked at the Egyptology? Is there anything there? And she said, no, just the usual old rubbish. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, you mean include this one? And there was a copy of it. She just completely missed the copy of the book with her name on it in there.
I tell you why, because I'd never seen a copy at that point. I had no idea what it had looked like even.
But British students don't know it. It's people are actually everywhere in other corners of the world, but not in the US. I mean, a lot of my students used to sort of treat Helen like as a deity, because it was the book that got them into it.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah, I know. When they said about it and I looked at it, I really do think it was really excellently. The essays were really good and the coverage was good, and that's the thing. I feel that there's not many books that have that good coverage of so many different subjects. That is done at a good level. So so unusually, I'm very happy to sort of stay. Yeah, I like that book. I think that's good, and I'm really pleased to recommend it to people. I just wish they could get a copy.
I'm sure Amazon or somewhere could.
I guess.
Yeah,
we've got a couple here.
Yeah.
Make photocopies, send it out to your students.
No way, Jose.
So Nigel, you actually worked as the curator of the Egyptian collection at Highclere Castle for the Carnarvon family. To work for the Carnarvons as an Egyptologist, it's kind of a big deal. How was that experience compared to working, with your other experiences that you've had at the British Museum?
Well, it was more of a consultational thing, really. And I just get they give me a small, retainer each year, and then I'd go up there maybe a couple of times a year and do things for them. I took over from Nick Reeves when he was doing something else then. And yeah, it was interesting for a number of years. I never quite could always get to the objects quite as often as I wanted to, because Newbury's quite away from here, and it's quite getting there. But I was hoping that maybe at some point we could reinstall it or something like that. And then I knew that they then started to think about doing this. But that was, and then the previous Lord Carnarvon, the seventh Earl, had died, and then his son took over. And gradually they decided they ought to do it themselves, really. So I sort of faded out of the picture, and but it was interesting. It means I've been all round Downton Abbey and and the estate and all sorts of things. I got another picture I've got here. My next slide was leads on to something I think you're going to ask us about. This was taken at the Senefa coffee shop, Snake's Cafe. That's Snake on the right there, just below the tomb of Rekhmire and Senefa. And that's Lord Porchester Geordie Carnarvon on the left, who is now the 8th Earl of Carnarvon, and that's his what would you call Adrian? His sort of
factotum.
Factotum, yeah, in the middle, who organised the whole thing.
Manager.
It was. No, he wasn't manager. I mean, he was his. Well, he was the
estate manager.
He was the castle manager. That's right.
Yeah, he was the castle manager.
Yeah. So it was an interesting experience while it lasted. Let's put it like that. I haven't been there for more than over 10 years now. And, I've not seen the redone exhibition and everything.
Well, I got to interview Lady Carnarvon a few months ago, actually now. It was a really nice interview, but when you were working with them, was it Lord Carnarvon, Lady Carnarvon, or was it Geordie and Fiona?
I can't remember now. somewhere in the middle. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
It would have been with his father certainly, but then because we did this, that picture was taken in Egypt, and because we did that film with them, which I'm sure we can talk about if. We got to know them moderately well, and they didn't stay, fortunately, in the place that we were staying. They were staying in the Winter Palace, of course. But yeah, we met them most days, and we got on well with them. But then just say gradually things just drifted apart, really.
Yeah. But you and Helen actually went to Egypt, like you said, with Lord Carnarvon. You filmed that documentary, but you went to excavate the tomb of Senefri. How is it working out in the field as a couple?
Well, I'd say exactly what Helen said earlier on about how we worked together here. It was quite the same. I was the overall director because I was originally the one that either got the grants and things like that. And Helen took responsibility for the archaeology because she's had much more proper archaeological training than I ever have, and I took charge of the epigraphic managerial side, but the two of us could switch around, and I was the mudir and she's the mudira, and so it was it worked equally well together in exactly the same way.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, I would say in those days we were first going out into Egypt in the 1980s to excavate, and those days it was very challenging. It's finding somewhere comfortable to stay, or getting stuff done in a timely way. That was quite challenging at times. Having you'd go for a meeting and you'd expect something to take about 10 minutes, and it would take a good hour or something like that. And at first we weren't used to that, and then we got sort of supporting each other so that you wouldn't get stressed by things. I think it was helpful actually that we could just
we got that attitude of mind, which I remember you suggested, just sort of let it all go, because I get pretty hyper about these things.
Yeah, so we'd be very relaxed about.
Yeah.
And it's easier to do that when there's two of you. Yeah, honestly, it's much easier.
Yeah, for sure. But I really enjoyed that documentary. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's
quite
good.
Funny.
It's good because I mean it's I know it's been in varying places on the internet recently, and I thought they did a good job with it. I mean, they still did one or two things that they didn't tell us they were going to do, as to say, through the experience of the media. In terms of how the media are to work with and for following what we actually did, they really did let us tell, the story. And it was a pretty good. It's still, I think, one of the best films about a dig I've seen in Egypt.
Yes.
Because as we don't have a television, we don't watch these programs anyway. So.
Yeah. I liked it because it was real. You know what I mean? It wasn't overhyped all the time.
No, it wasn't. There wasn't any of that redoing it over and over again. They would just fly on the walls. They got used to being there.
And they were very good. When we at the outset, we said to them, we're happy to do this, but if we say you can't film this next bit, we mean that. Yeah, and they absolutely accepted that.
No, they were a good crew to work. They were good, nice people to work with, I have to say.
Yeah.
Now, the tomb of Senefer, which is TT 96, is a very unique tomb with the ceilings being painted and covered in vines. But a tomb that you've both investigated is the tomb of Senefri, TT 99. Now, people often find that a little bit confusing. Was there a link between the two tombs? And what makes TT 99 unique?
Shall I take this one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no real link other than they basically have the same name. TT99 writes the name both as Senefer and Senefri, but probably more examples with the final I. And in the Tomb of the Vines of Mayor Senefer, I think I spotted one example on a block, which may have been an intrusive one there anyway. I can't really, so there's no real link between them other than they're about 30 meters apart, and Senefer TT96 is 30-40 years later than Senefri. And the only link we can come up with is that Robert Mond, who excavated around the Theban necropolis in 1903 to 1905, we found out that he clearly stored finds in Tomb 96, the tomb of Senefer, in the chapel, not in the burial chambers. And this was the normal way things were done in the old days. That you just found the nearest tomb, and the antiquities inspectors locked stuff in there. I mean, it's not done like that now. But when we first went into Senefri's tomb, we found lots of sculptures and things that were in there. And somebody that just found on the Jebel and put him in there. I think the different thing about Senefer 96 in that sense was that it became a magazine, a storeroom, because they decided at some point in the 20s or 30s, or maybe later, to store the Tutankhamun plain black boxes in there, which you've probably never seen because they were the only bits that weren't in Cairo. And so once Tutankhamun stuff went in there, it had to become a proper legal storeroom, sealed, and you need permission from God to get in there, basically. But they'd also in there what they did then when they took the stuff to Cairo around 2000, I think. The inspectors, Mohammed Al-Bili was a director at the time, and he said, look, we found some stuff from the tomb we think belongs to the tomb of Senefri in the other side. Do you want to come and have a look at it? So of course we said yes, because we're not getting into the upper tomb of Senefer was virtually impossible. And we found parts of the false door in there, which I reconstructed in the book, and we found all sorts of other things, which not that we couldn't work on it, unfortunately. We didn't have permission to do that, but there was a massive amount of stuff that was stored in there in probably how Mond had left it in 1904. So that's the only link I think I can find between them, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of those tuck boxes?
No, I don't. I mean, there's the only picture I can think of. There's one in Lisa Manika's The City of the Dead, Thebes in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's the only one I can think of. I mean, I could go and find it if you want, but I think you wouldn't be
It's okay.
Ever the academic. But yes, they're in Cairo now. And they're probably in the gem, I would guess.
Yeah.
But for both of you, climbing down into tombs and things like that, especially unexcavated tombs, do you find that nerve-wracking at all?
No, not really. I think because you kind of get taken over by the moment and the interest. Nigel's very much more gung-ho about going into things than I am. I'm always a little bit more cautious than he is, and I tend to stay on the outside in case something happens to him. But once he's gone in and says it's fine, then I'll pop in as well. But I mean, I know that for some people it's quite daunting to do that, and also, I mean, there is the very real danger that there may be snakes down there or something like that. So I'd much rather Nigel met them than I did. That's another good reason to have someone else working with you. You can send them in and they get the snakes first.
Yeah, I don't think about it at all. I mean, the main thing you have to think about is for God's sake, don't damage anything when you go down there, and let your, subordinate your enthusiasm to what's actually down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Touch as little as possible. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What has been a piece of information that you have found while excavating that really changed your perspective of the ancient world?
Helen's going to answer this one for you.
Well, I've got a different answer now, Nigel, because I was thinking about this. So you might have to say the other answer. So I was thinking about this because this is something that I find really interesting, and you've just alluded to it about talking about going down the shafts and things like that, because it's really difficult until you start doing that and being part of the really getting to grips with understanding the structure of the underground areas in a tomb. You don't really understand the physicality of what it's like to operate in those spaces, and that can bring you a whole new realization about how difficult it must have been to actually carry out a burial in those spaces. You think people were buried in this, so and so was buried in that tomb, Senefa was buried in that tomb, Senefri was buried in that tomb, but just saying those words doesn't give you a sense of what that actually meant in physical terms. So
yeah.
You think about the burial shaft of Senefri.
Yes.
Was 15.5 meters deep. Now there were lots of coffins down at the bottom there. There was his coffin, and maybe two coffins, his wife's. Getting those things down there is really hard. How did you do that without the body falling out? Then you think about the space that there is down there, and so in the burial chamber, what we think is the burial chamber down there, were lots and lots of large jars, ceramic jars down there. So they all had to be got down there without them all smashing, and then you had to get them into these spaces, and you couldn't stand up, and it's hot and it's filthy dirty down there. And all of that really conflicts with what you see in the tomb paintings of people that are going in their fine white linen, and there's sort of, elaborate rituals going on. And we think that that's burial. But actually, there is this incredible physicality. So, that is something I think that I would never have got without going regularly into tombs and scrambling around in them. So that's my answer, actually. That's the kind of...
My answer, I'll just be brief about it, is just really about how much how much we've learned, I think, from... When we were working in the 80s, we didn't really understand very much about who was being buried in the tombs apart from the sort of tomb. And now we and others have been working on looking at sort of what there is in family, who it was reused by, and then the whole issue of it being reused then again several hundred years later in the third intermediate period. And I think the idea of reuse came very much into focus then, and then that's been very much a focus of what Helen and I have done recently, particularly what Helen's been doing at the Fitzwilliam.
Yeah. And now you mentioned the Fitzwilliam, which brings me to my next question. Helen, you actually are the curator of Egyptian antiquities at the Fitzwilliam Museum. And you do some amazing work on educating people on the techniques and analyzing ancient wooden sarcophagi. That's a very delicate procedure, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. The work that we do is I think it's amazing. I mean, I don't do the difficult stuff. I've actually got a picture here to show you as well, so I'm going to do my sharing screen thing. So yeah, I mean, what we work on are things that are often quite fragmentary. Like, so this is a portion of a coffin from Abydos dating to the very early 18th dynasty, or possibly the end of the 17th dynasty. So the end of the Second Intermediate period. And this is just a portion of it. You can see that there's a hole in the middle, and there are all sorts of tubed bits around the outside. So this is the top surface with the painted decoration on the outside. But if you turn it over, you see it's been eaten away by termites like crazy. And when we were working on this, a conservator, took on the project called Sophie Rowe, and came up with a way of stabilizing this, because what was happening was that the old restorations that had been done to it had been very intense and caused it so it become very hard on one surface, the sort of termite surface, if you like, and the other surface was not coated in any kind of preservative of any sort. I'm not using very loose terminology because I'm not a conservator. So it was very hard on one side and very soft on the other side, and that caused it to bow very, very much. So she had to remove all the old conservation stuff that had happened to it so that it could be flattened. And then we had to find a way of supporting it to display it. And, something that's as fragile as that is really hard to manage. So she came up with the idea of casting the back of it. So I think you can probably see my pointer. Yeah. So these odd things are bits of plastic. Plastic, I'm using in a loose term. It's probably something much more clever than that. But it's gone onto the wood, and then there is plaster here being poured onto it to create something that is the exact shape of the back of the board in this case, and again there. And then those are adhered to a plastic mount that you can see here. And then when you sit the whole thing on to that mount, the wood fits absolutely exactly onto those supports. Yes. Because it's absolutely molded from the back of it. So it was incredibly clever work that she did, and brilliant.
Yeah, looks like very delicate work as well.
Yeah, it was very, very delicate work indeed. They work very, very hard on sort of studying these objects as well. So it's not just a matter of coming up with solutions to kind of mend things and to display them, but we also do a lot of analytical work, or they do a lot of analytical work, I should say, our conservators. And then I sort of sit with them and talk about what we're seeing. But one of the most exciting things that in that area that we've been doing is using CT scanning to analyse how coffins were constructed. And I think that's probably what I was talking about when I was in Sutton, actually, when I was there most recently, as we were talking about earlier on. But I was just going to show you an image of that kind of work and what that reveals. If I can find my screen to share. Come on, little computer, behave. There it is. That we are. So this is another coffin, much more complete. And you can see the outside of it looks like it's a fairly solid piece of wood, albeit there's a crack across there, you can see. And you can see from this angle here the way it was constructed with, sort of what's effectively a dovetail joint there. And this is the CT scan of it, and it looks like indeed it's made of two pieces of wood there, held together with dowels. And here you can see the dovetail joints holding it onto the ends of the long sides. But if you move further into the CT scan, so you go back a few slices, because the CT goes through in slicing you up, or if you're in your CT scanner as a person, or the coffin. So going back slice by slice, we can see here further inside the coffin, or that end panel rather, here is a recess that is actually an old mortise joint, and somebody's shoved a bit of wood in it to kind of fill it off. So this is not, there is no reason why you would have a joint there. It's not doing anything. The joints are these dowels holding this together. So this is just a filler because this piece of wood was used from something else, first of all. So we can see all of that without taking the coffin apart and damaging all the decoration. And so my colleague Julie Dawson, who I work with very closely a lot of the time, she's done a lot of work in analysing these sorts of things, but also in looking at the tool marks that you can see, and you can measure the kind of tool head. You know, so this was a narrow chisel here, this is a broader chisel here. You can actually see in some of these dowel holes the point of the way that the bow drill was used to actually cut the hole. And so, you know, it's just amazing things that you can do. And so these kind of analytical techniques and just careful looking are brilliant parts of the kind of work that we've been doing and the work of the conservators there. You know, in addition to actually doing conservation and repairing fragile coffins. So it's great to be part of that team. I love it.
It's so interesting to see the CT scans, because you wouldn't think that there would be anything underneath the plaster.
No.
I mean, some people don't even realize that it's plaster on there. They think it's just painted on the wood.
Yeah.
So that must be so interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. And, you know, CT scanners now are getting better and better. The only difficulty is that the size of the data sets that you get from them are enormous. So managing the data is quite an issue, but the information that you get is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, what is a tomb that both of you would still like to investigate?
Well, I'm gonna take this one. I mean, but there's all so many to choose. Well, not as many as there would have been once, because there's a lot of people working out there. You've got to bear in mind our ages and all this sort of stuff, and getting grants isn't as easy as it used to be. I'm quite intrigued by a tomb that dates to the reign of Ramses III, a man called Chenefer. It's tomb 158, which the decoration was published after a fashion by Chicago House about 40, 50 years ago, probably more now. But there's one thing I've been working on a lot the last, it's nearly the best part of 10 years now, is tomb robbery. And this, there's actually papyrus that's actually in the British Museum that actually talks about the robbery of this tomb. It's the only tomb that we can actually identify in the tomb robbery papyri. And I'm just going to read, you know, Helen's had a go there at her coffin, so I'll read out this translation of this thing here. This is the robbers speaking when they were confessing. We went to the tomb of Chenefer, we opened it, and we brought out his inner coffins, and we took his mummy and left it there in the corner of the tomb. We took his inner coffins to this boat, along with the rest, to the island of Vaminopet. We set fire to them in the night, and we made away with the gold we found on them. And then it goes on to other tombs, but that Chenefer, we know from the titles there, that's actually the man who was actually the owner of tomb 158. And it would be great to go and see what state the underground chambers of that tomb are in. We've only got a sketch of that.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting.
That's pretty solid evidence right there on that papyrus.
Well, yeah, I mean, but we've got to, one of the things you become as I think as an Egyptologist, you get extremely skeptical about all sorts of written evidence. But you've got to look at it in context. And this is a legal document, so it's probably more reliable than a lot of other things. But, you can't take literary texts, temple texts at face value. You've got to know how to interpret them in context. And it's a mistake that a lot of people make, including our colleagues, taking things too literally. I mean, I've always told students, just think of everything, contextualize it before you use it to make an argument.
Yeah. Well, we do that a lot. We read, one little sentence and we make a whole story around it.
Yeah.
So,
it's true.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts as, archaeologists as well, on this new city that's been discovered in Luxor? We know that it was first excavated about 100 years ago by the French, but abandoned. Why do you think it took so long to get back?
Well, can I answer this one, Helen?
Yeah.
We really, I don't think we know much about it because it's gone through the media filter, and we've already said about what how we feel about the media. I think presumably they forgot it there, and we don't yet know. We know the inspectors in Luxor pretty well, so next time we go, we'll find out a lot more about it. It looks to me, from a quick look around it, it's obviously a settlement associated with the mortuary temples of Amenhotep III, Comet Hetan, and then Tutankhamun and I Am Horemheb, which are all in the same area. And it may one thing we lack on the West Bank is real evidence about where these people lived. The people that served the temples, the people that did the menial jobs. He talks about Del Medina, but those are very special people working in the Valley of the Kings. Yeah. It's interesting to have a settlement that obviously can also be excavated now, as opposed to 100 years ago, that might give us some of this sort of information. We have evidence that we know that there are settlements along there. There's another wonderful papyrus in the British Museum that is actually a list of houses that runs from the Seti Temple in the north, by the entrance to the Valley of the Kings, right down to Medinet Habu in the south. Yeah. And there was a town of about 100 houses near Medinet Habu. Now, it's not that. I'm not saying it's that house, because this is end of the 20th dynasty. It's the sort of things that they might be those sort of settlements that were possibly relatively ephemeral. People just moved on and built another one somewhere else. So we'll have to find out more about it, because we are supposed to be writing, under contract to write a second edition of our Thebes in Egypt book, and something else we want to put in. That, so we'll have to speak nicely to our inspector friends. But maybe try and talk to Zahi.
Zahi and Salima, they're both working there. So,
well, we know Zahi quite well. So I mean, but he's
well, if you need someone to come and make a documentary about it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I promise I won't edit what you say.
Except to take out the errors.
Yeah, so I believe you guys have a huge collection of teddy bears.
We do. I mean, it's huge. Is well.
There's some of them. We've got about 110 plus of them, and they take over our house, basically.
And who's the favourite one?
Well, if we said we had a favourite, we'd be in trouble with the rest of them. But we both, Helen, are you ready?
Yes, we have to turn off the slide. You have to turn off the slide.
Childhood bears. There's mine, called Ted.
And this is mine here.
He's called Peter.
Oh,
so, we've got to give a particular shout out to these two, because these two have, gone a long way with us.
Yeah.
Oh, cute little things.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't actually show you. I possibly may not see me. There's Ted if you didn't see me.
Oh, I didn't see the necklace. Wow.
No, I know. Well, we pick up things from them because we always, ever since Helen started it in 2001, we travel with a bear. Several people that are in the list of participants tonight have seen wearing bears, and we always take a different one along. And he went to New Orleans, and
I was going to say it's a Mardi Gras necklace.
It was just before.
It is, exactly.
Just before, was it, or just after Mardi Gras? And people were just throwing beads out the windows and everything. So he picked them up, and he's got them on him. Peter's got a leg, hasn't he?
He has got a leg.
Yeah. Every time we go to Hawaii, Peter comes up with bears that go are distinguished by that.
We're not quite insane, but close.
Insane, but very British.
Do they ever go with the Morris dancing?
No,
it's a bit rough for them, I think.
Too much alcohol involved there.
Yeah. Bears when they drink.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, they like drinking though.
So you both give lectures, sometimes together, sometimes separate. What has been one of the most interesting questions you've been asked at a lecture?
I'm going to go first on that, Nigel. I don't know if you've got.
I've got a different sort of answer.
Okay, well, so this isn't really when I was lecturing, but I was a lecturer on a Nile cruise. I used to do that a lot. We both did, actually. And we were in Karnak Temple, and a chap came up to me, and asked me why the Egyptians had done a particular architectural feature in a particular way. So it was kind of like these joists going across, these stone joists, and the way that they joined on top of the capitals. And he said, that's just so hard to achieve. Why on earth didn't they do it in a more straightforward way? And I said, I don't know, because I'm not an architect and it's not my subject. But it made me think that some of the most interesting questions are by specialist people who really know their own subject, and they're asking a question that you really need to pay attention to. Yeah. So, and that's really been my experience a lot when I've been talking to the public. So if I'm talking about pottery, often people will say, oh, I make pots myself. And so they can tell me stuff that I can take away and go, that's fantastically useful knowledge. Yeah. So it was a lesson that I learned really early on, that actually, when people ask you questions, you really need to listen to them, because there's a nugget in there that's going to make you think in a different way almost every time. Yeah. So that was my most interesting question, I think. But there've been lots of others, but that was just a really seminal moment for me.
I mean, I can't actually remember. I mean, there have been plenty of interesting questions. I don't have a terribly good memory for that. But what I'm going to do instead is remember the weirdest question and answer session I had. It was in Egypt. It was on a cruise, and I was given a talk in the Nile Hilton in Cairo. Yeah, with the passengers that we were staying there for some reason. And then, at the end of the talk, for some reason that I just don't understand, this woman walked in saying she got a message for me, or for us, from God. She walked up to the whiteboard got a pen and scribbled something on it, and then just walked straight out. And that was the weirdest experience I have ever had in the lectures, and I've had a few weird experiences over the years. So I thought I'd tell you that one rather than thinking of a question.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I got an email from Nefertari the other day.
You do.
Well, that could bring on to strange visitors in when you're on duty in museums, because I got one of the worst with woman said she was Nefertiti. Next minute she was Jesus Christ. Next minute she was Akhenaten. I thought I could deal with her, but they got security to take her out in the end. Yeah, that was a good one. We used to get. I mean, that's one of the wonders of working at the British Museum. You do get some most amazing people. Sometimes with really interesting things. Sometimes completely
insane things. Yeah. I once had a 4-hour argument with, I'll use the word, a pyramidiot, and it was all about aliens and things. And I kept giving the answers and the explanations. And he kept coming back with another theory.
We've been there.
Yeah. Well, Nigel was talking earlier about the jewellery shop, and that was a lot. We don't know how the pyramids were built. They must have been built by a superior intelligence. And I just kept saying, I think you're underestimating the abilities of the Egyptians. Well, we don't know. There's no evidence for how they built them. And I was saying, well, actually, there is. There's a lot of evidence for how they were built. Yeah. But he didn't want to hear
the sledges and the papyrus and all these things. We just don't know the exact way they built it, but definitely from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Nigel and Helen, this has been so much fun getting to know you guys. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to speak to us and to speak to the group. So before I hand over to the audience to get a few questions from them, I have some quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
All right.
You want us to do each sort of thing, yeah?
Yeah. Who should go first?
Okay. Nigel goes first.
Okay, Nigel, then Helen.
Okay.
All right. Favorite place in Egypt?
I can never answer these things. I never know in Egypt. It's got to be Luxor or the West Bank. I thought either up above Del Bahri or even up the Gurn, looking over there. That's probably the best one. The place I would most like to be, because we had some magical.
This is quick fire. Stop talking.
All right.
So I'm going to say Nazla in the Fayoum, which is a wonderful place where they make pottery.
Okay. Favorite place out of Egypt?
Nigel.
Well, I love travelling. There's so many places. I could be Burgundy in France, Venice, Hawaii, or Berlin. They're the only ones I could think of. I just love travelling, and I love every place I go to.
Hawaii for me.
Ah, nice. Favorite artifact?
Okay, you're gonna love this. I teased you about this one.
You did. I'm dying to see it. Ah!
Yeah, well, we won't want to get onto what your interest in that one is, but I only came across it about a month ago when the catalogue we've been translating recently. And before that, it was always the Tutmosis III statue in Luxor. This just blew me away. It is the most amazing statue I think I've ever seen from the New Kingdom.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's in the Louvre. For those of you who are listening, it's in the Louvre. It's a statue of a person called Menu, and it's been in the Louvre since around about the time of the First World War. Anyway, we're not going to go on for long about that one. So that's my answer to that one.
I caused a bit of controversy with that statue. So if anyone
wants that's why I thought you'd be interested in it.
Yeah.
But I do mean that it's my current favourite object. I mean, it's my picture on my phone, and all sorts of things.
Okay. I've got Ramses II.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Who else?
Helen, you got to do
Helen, your favourite.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now too. So this is my favourite object. This is in fact a group of coffins in the Fitzwilliam Museum. I'm sorry that it's from the Fitzwilliam Museum, except I'm not. I'm intensely proud that it is. So this is the coffins of Nesbawa Sheffitt, and I talk about them endlessly because they're such fabulous objects, but I want to just show you the detail of the face on the mummy board,
wow,
which is exquisite and just mind-blowing, and a detail from the side of one of the coffins. This is a tiny little section, but you just see the skill of the artisan. I find it just mind-boggling.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's my favorite object.
Okay, best discovery that you have made, Nigel.
Can I? It's got to be three things that I will go. I'm afraid, because there are different types of best discoveries. The most spectacular thing, without a doubt, is this statue of Amenhotep that we found in 1993. It's the son-in-law of Senefri.
Yes.
In some ways, the most intriguing objects we found, with a number of strange bits of ivory, which we then found some other tools that belong with them, which is actually an opening of the mouth kit that was actually buried with Senefri. And it's led off into a whole new range of research. And the most interesting thing that I didn't even know we had was this. There's an ostracon that we found in about 1995, and which has turned out to be a sort of syllabary of writing out syllables and sounds, possibly one of the earliest attempts at doing anything vaguely alphabetic in Egypt.
Because
I didn't know what that was.
I'm seeing hieratic and hieroglyphs on.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I mean, I didn't have time before we came online today just to reread the art. But there's several different scholars have had a go at that, writing things about it. It was first brought up by a colleague of ours in Leiden called Ben Haring, about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just it's so far beyond me. I can't comment on it, but I trust these people.
Like I have to tell you quick, I was looking at pictures of ostraca the other day, and someone had said to me on an interview that the Egyptians didn't use punctuation to end a sentence. And I looked at this, and in between the sentences, they put a red dot. Yeah. And I thought, hold on, that's punctuation.
They're actually usually known as verse points among Egyptologists, but nobody's quite sure, as far as I know, though I'm not an expert on literature, what they are. But they certainly, because they don't always work. They don't always time with where sentences end, and sometimes they may be something metrical. But that's a very complicated question.
Interesting indeed. Helen?
the burial of Wedger Hall in TT99, because I was supervising the excavation at that moment, and this amazingly fine linen came up, and I just thought, stop, this is different. And so we stopped, and then I took over excavating it and found this incredible linen with dates, with a date and the name of the king, and the body as well. So it was just a wonderful. It's not very often that you find a body that you can identify somebody's name that's not within a coffin.
Concrete evidence, yeah.
And then also knowing the date when he was buried. It was just amazing.
Yeah. Favorite pharaoh?
It's got to be somebody Old Kingdom. I don't have particular ancient Egyptian heroes. Senefru, maybe Nusret, maybe. I mean, recently I've been looking at Pepi the First purely because I've been, and I'm going to share my screen again. I've been working on this Old Kingdom royal decree for the Berlin Museum, which is one of the longest documents that we have of this particular type. So Pepi the First is quite an interesting fellow as well. So that's my answer.
The name of Snefru as well.
Snefru, yeah, I think Snefru is interesting because so much started then. Big pyramids and the administrations and yeah. I don't know. I don't do personality cults anyway. So,
Helen,
Seti the First.
Very good answer.
I like. He's got a beautiful mummy, just beautiful face. The temple at Abydos, it is beautiful. His tomb is beautiful. He's standout person for me.
Favorite queen, Nigel?
That's really hard. The one that intrigues me possibly the most is actually this lady who was buried in this tomb at Giza, Carnarvons, who was supposedly the mother of two kings of Upper and Lower Egypt, possibly the mother of Usakaf and Sahure at the beginning of the 5th dynasty.
What was her name again?
Khentkawes.
Khentkawes, yeah. And I know some think that she might have been the actual first female pharaoh at some point.
That's no. That doesn't seem to be the case, but that's another interpretation of the same text. That she could have been mother of the king of and mother of a king of and king of Upper and Lower Egypt. That we don't go for now. The fun thing is, there's another mother of two kings of Upper and Lower Egypt, also called Khentkawes, from the reign of Neferkare, just a couple of reigns later in the 5th dynasty. So it's all very, very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Helen?
Tia, wife of Amenhotep III.
Yes, amazing woman.
Amazing woman, great statues, same size as her husband.
Yeah. I got to see, quick information, I got to see the statue of Muttoy, Ramses II's mother, at the Vatican on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I was blown away by the size. There's a statue for a queen of that size. It was amazing. Yeah,
fantastic.
Well, there's the amazing one of Tia or Mary Tamun, whoever it is, at Akhmim that we've been reading a lot about in this translation we've been doing recently.
Yeah,
we went to see that 17 years ago, and it's pretty special. In fact, I was in Egypt when they found it.
You were?
Yeah.
New Kingdom, Old Kingdom, or Middle Kingdom, and why?
Me, Old Kingdom. I mean, I think I vaguely thought I had some idea of how it worked when I finished my thesis.
Yeah.
Helen?
New Kingdom. Because I was thinking about why, and that because we've got so much more information at that time about not kings, and just for me, it's a much more interesting period for that reason.
Yeah. Final one. Proudest moments of your life.
I don't have a particular proud moment I can think of, but I can remember something that I've always said I would like to be remembered for and put on my gravestone, which is he introduced Egyptology to the internet in 1993 to 1996. That is something I think few people would disagree with. I was one of the first people, possibly the first person to bring the World Wide Web, the internet generally, to the attention of our subject. And look where we are now. If it wasn't, we're on this.
Exactly. So it's your fault.
Yeah. Well, I blame Tim Berners-Lee and all those other people, I would say, really.
Helen?
Well, in terms of Egyptology, I was really proud once when I gave a lecture, and somebody I respect came up to me afterwards and said, "I will never look at a coffin the same way again," after I'd finished. So I thought, good, that was good.
Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, both of you. This has been so enlightening hearing your stories. And now I would like to hand over to the audience. So whoever unmutes the quickest, ask your question.
That might be me.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Helen, when you were telling us in Sutton about all the anomalies on the coffins,
yeah.
I know after your talk, a lot of people said to me they'd be looking at coffins in a completely different way again. And it's true. But of course, we didn't have the opportunity because COVID set in.
Yeah.
Closed down. But what I'd like to ask you is, are there any Egypt-themed events or exhibitions planned at the FITS?
Not exhibitions. We are it's a slightly complicated answer, this. We're meant to be doing a project at the moment in Egypt, working with colleagues on how Roman mummy portraits were made and decorated, and their use, and also helping them with a concept that we've pioneered in terms of Egyptology and direct interaction with people. This is actually speaks to what you were saying, Curtis, actually about outreach to people, as it were, directly by Egyptologists. So we've been doing this thing where we go and we share information directly between us as the people researching on the objects and the public, but standing in a kind of marketplace or in a shop with some objects or some things, and we talk to people, basically very directly. And we've been sharing that idea with colleagues in Egypt, and they're very keen to do that. So we were going to be doing that also with our Roman mummy portraits, but we can't do that. So we're going to be doing some of those actually in Cambridge, on the front lawn of the museum. We don't have dates for that yet, but that's coming up, I hope, very much anyway. Wow. As an idea. So that should be happening. And we're going to do a small kind of redisplay in one of our Egyptian galleries, which will open it next year, kind of as part of the celebrations of 2022. And we'll be involving Egyptians in some of their work on how we're going to redisplay the objects so that they get their voices involved in that work as well. So that's what we've got coming up at the museum.
Great. I can see another trip coming up to the FITS.
You're welcome anytime.
I love that place.
But you have to book in now. So you have to do your online booking to get your tickets, but they're free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next question.
I have a brief question, if I may.
Sure.
Did I understand correctly that one of you said that the Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt is not available in the UK?
It's not available in the UK.
Good heavens, this is it, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, mine's published in the UK.
Ah, yes, they are published in the UK.
Yeah.
But
it's printed in the UK.
You can't buy it here.
Good heavens.
It's annoying.
Well, it's backwards.
Yeah, it really is.
Why would that be?
Maybe they thought the market was flooded with that kind of thing in the UK. I don't know.
We've got one.
Yeah, we do. But I mean, literally, I had never seen it because I couldn't get copies in the UK until we were in the States.
Well, if you're here, you can read mine.
But yeah, I mean, it's distributed in the UK. It says, but
But it isn't. I mean, and it was quite funny because I actually when I got back from that visit, I actually wrote to them and I said, you know what, I haven't actually ever seen this book. Could you actually send me a copy?
I bought mine about 5 or 6 years ago. And you know, when I have like friends over and we often discuss things about ancient Egypt, you know, like they'll say, oh, I heard this. And then I'll prove them wrong. And they say, how do you know this? And I'm like, hold on, let me get Helen Strudwick's book.
That's funny.
So yeah, you should get onto them and see why it's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, as I say, it's not my work in the basics. It's someone else, but no, I don't know who the authors were of the individual essays. So I can't take any credit for those. I just, as I say, I pulled it together and edited it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I love it as a book. I think it's a good book.
Yeah. Next question.
I have a question.
Hi, Arse.
Hello. I so enjoyed meeting the two of you and hearing about your work. And I guess my question, I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask one to Helen. You talked about your area of interest being the common people. And so I was wondering, what aspect of the common people's life do you enjoy the most? Do you enjoy looking at like their family dynamics, the artisan, you know, like who created what, their religious practices, those kinds of things. And also then in conjunction with that, where do you end up finding those kinds of pieces of information, since so much is, you know, on the pharaohs and royalty and propaganda?
Yeah, that's such a good question. You know, there you go. There's an interesting, really interesting question. I think it's what is it about them that I really am interested in? I think it's the way they think, insofar as I can work that out. What was the thinking behind reusing things in the way that they did in Egypt? You know, because we have this, we think we know why, you know, the inscriptions are in the way they are on a coffin, let's say, because I know about coffins. So they have all these inscriptions on there, and we spend an awful lot of time saying this is to kind of align the person with this god to ensure that this happens and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, only a very small percentage of the population, you know, maybe 2%, sometimes maybe 5% at other times, could actually read those hieroglyphs. So it didn't really help them to see that. They had to take it very much on trust. So why would you then, you know, what would help you to choose when you go in to buy a coffin? What would the thought process be to say, you know, I want that one and not that one? Is it just show? Is it, you know, that looks really fancy, and it's really good quality, or is it what I can afford? It's that kind of thought process that I'm not sure I can actually obviously assume very much that I understand that thought process, but I just like putting myself in those people's shoes and trying to work it out. And so I love when you sort of see, again, on a coffin where someone's clearly bought something that was ready-made and already inscribed, and then they've added their name to it, and the added name hasn't been done quite so well, you know, and you sort of think, now what was happening there? Why didn't they spend a little bit more and get the name written a little bit better? And then we've got another set of coffins that we have in the museum. We've got an inner coffin and an outer coffin for a man called Parkepu, who was a water pourer on the west of Thebes. So he was kind of like not the top rank official at that time, it's sort of 25th, 26th dynasty. He was obviously, you know, relatively well off. He would be performing the cult for people who could pay him to do that for their dead relatives. So he had quite a bit of money, but not the topmost amount of money. So these two coffins that we have of his are really shoddily decorated. And that's a very kind of judgmental thing to say, but I would justify saying that because the hieroglyphs are just meaningless in a lot of places, or at best you can kind of guess what they were attempting to say. And you can see where the chap who was painting the face on one of the coffins, he ran out of paint basically, so he thinned it down and then sort of did the rest of it, and then, you know, it looked okay till it dried, and then it, you know, obviously wasn't good enough. So there's all those kinds of things. And so we've done a lot of work looking at the interiors of them. Again, actually not CT scanning both parts, because one of them is massive and we can't get it into a CT scanner. So that we've done that with X-rays. So we looked at that and looked at the structure of that. And we can see that it's made of all sorts of bits and pieces of wood. There are voids in there that have been filled with really horrible kind of clay almost, to bulk it out. So it makes it a very, very heavy coffin. So that's the outer coffin is like that. And it is a patchwork of bits and pieces to make, you know, what is not a really glamorous looking coffin. Inside it was this inner coffin, similarly decorated. And we took that to be CT scanned. And when we CT scanned it, we expected to find the same kind of mishmash of stuff inside. It wasn't. It was perfectly carved, absolutely immaculately carved. But then somebody had put this stuff around the outside, and then, you know, decorated it in the same way as the outer coffin was decorated. And that just kind of poses us with a kind of riddle of what was going on. Why was this the inner coffin so fantastically good? So somebody spent a lot of money on that, but they didn't spend a lot of money on the outer coffin that went into, and then had the whole lot decorated in this horrible, shoddy way. What was happening there? So, you know, what are the thought processes? And the only explanation I can come up with is that actually the inner coffin was a part of the package that you got when you were mummified at that period. So you were mummified and then you were put inside this coffin that was actually like the last layer of the mummification process. And then that got returned to the relatives. And then they took that off and put it into and took it to the workshop where they were going to buy the outer coffin and go, okay, here you go, decorate this. So that's the only explanation I can come up with for it. And but it's a kind of, you know, you really got to think your way into what was going on there. So those are the kinds of things I love kind of thinking about, and the nitty gritty of that sort of stuff, and the arguments that you can imagine would have happened. I shouldn't say too much. I'm talking too much, but I imagine these kind of, you know. So I will say. So, for example, we've got the coffins of Nespal Sheffield, which I showed a picture of before. There's one section on one of the coffins that broke. So they've done a load of work to make this coffin out of all sorts of reused pieces of wood. And it looked lovely and it was all ready to go. And then they thought, well, we're going to put the face on now. So they drilled a hole for the dowel to hold the face on, and the whole thing split from top to bottom. And you can just imagine everybody shouting and, you know, what are we going to do now? You know, so those sorts of things that I just love.
Yes. And something that you said at the beginning is something that I wonder about too. Like, I like to read through the coffin text, you know, it's kind of like bedtime stories before I go to sleep. And oftentimes I'm wondering, like, yeah, whose coffin is this on, and why did they choose this? Because you see, you know, loads of them with references to Anubis, or then you come across ones that have references to Horus, or you know, snake bites and charms. And so it's like, is that depending on like where they lived, and maybe they dealt more with snakes, and so that was something they were really afraid of? Or
these are really fun things to think about, I think.
Yes. Well,
very fascinating subject if you think about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we'll take one more question. If anyone has a question for us, or have we? I think we might have talked everyone out.
What I was going to say is, I always get my books off of Abe and Abe Books on the internet, and you can get the encyclopedia from there.
Okay, good news.
So everyone who's watching who doesn't have the book, go and buy it. Okay, so I'm going to give a second or two to check if anyone has a question. If not, 1, 2, 3. No, great. Okay. I see someone unmuted and muted again. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, Nigel and Helen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. It was so interesting, really, to hear all of your stories and the experiences, and just keep up the amazing work that you both do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's good to have a chance to chat.
Yeah.
Yes. We haven't done this before, have we?
No.
I know they're quite personal, but I think it's a lot of fun.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think there's a space to be filled. We should know our Egyptologists better.
I think that's absolutely right.
So keep up the Morris dancing, keep up collecting teddy bears, and we will chat again.
Actually, I should say, I'm going to just say to you, actually, we don't collect them.
They collect us.
I'm not joking, because what happens is people say, we know you collect teddy bears, so we brought you a bear. And that's how they arrive. We just get more and more of them because people bring them to us.
So please put out the word that we've got enough of them. We don't need any more. I can see at least one person here, Bettina, who's seen 2 of our bears when we were travelling to your.
That's true.
Where you worked like a couple of 3-4 years ago. So.
Well, so there you have it. Don't send any bears because they don't collect them anymore. Great. Well, thank you so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Keep safe. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And please come back next week, Friday, where I'll be interviewing Adam Mastrelli from Secrets Unlocked from the Smithsonian Channel. So it should be fun. And until then, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very
much. Bye, everybody. Thanks,
you. Nigel. Thanks, Helen. Bye.
Bye.
Nigel. Thanks, Curtis. Been absolutely great.
Thanks, Jill. Bye. Bye, Osset.
Bye.
So how's everything there in the UK for you guys?
Okay, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit mad still working from home. You feel a bit kind of strange doing it, but I've now got used to not being in the museum, not seeing the objects regularly, and every now and then absolutely have to go in though. Exactly. It's like you're drawn there, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was
Finn, why do you get your goal? Was a bit better. What's Vincy?
What's going on?
This was very good. It was very funny. I was trying like a huge face.
Wait, I'm gonna mute. There we go.
Oh, Curtis.
I think they were having a private conversation.
I think they were.
Yeah, you should mute everybody.
I'll figure that out. At the moment as well, I'm working on a computer that is set up in Italian. So.
Oh.
Yes, I saw that all the invitations were in Italian.
It's a bit challenging.
Yeah, I'm like, just going on what I think would be the right button.
Eric should be joining. He's on his way back from his daughter's. Went over to see his daughter today.
Okay. It wouldn't be the same without Derek on one of the chats.
No, it wouldn't, would it?
No. Nigel and Helen, you guys will see that these interviews, it's sort of like a pub. We have our locals. Yeah. So we have a few guests who join like almost every time. So
that's nice.
Yeah,
I'm glad I could join today. Always.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again.
Well, we were very lucky in Sutton because actually Helen was our last live speaker.
So I remember that.
Yeah. I came to the station and we went and had a cuppa in Patisserie Valerie.
Yes, we did. That was lovely, actually. That was the last thing I did, really, before we shut down.
That's right. It was just about, I think it was 10 days before we shut down.
It was.
We were very lucky.
It was a strange time, but only got stranger.
Yeah.
Good road.